Good evening, everybody. We will call the budget hearing to order.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, as part of our annual budget process for calendar year 2022, we have the next phase of our budget process, which is a public hearing. There's 3 items that were published for public consumption. One is budget form 3, which shows our tax rate, advertised tax rate, levy, and total budget for each of our funds. Also, our capital projects plan and our bus replacement plan. The capital projects plan spans a 3-year time period, 2022, 23, and 24, and the bus replacement plan spans a 5-year time period. All that information was published on the DLGF Gateway website, as well as the BHMSD website for the public to review. At this time, as part of the budget process, we welcome the public comment section.
Any comments from the public in regards to the budget? Hearing none, I may have a motion. Can I have a motion for adjournment for the budget hearing?
So moved.
First by Mr. Murray. Second? Second. Second by Mrs. Sheets. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 4-0. Moving on to our public hearing in regards to our amendments to our leases.
Yes, the school corporation is funding projects through a lease financing, as it has done with other past construction and renovation projects. Lease financing are used by school corporations across the state of Indiana in order to borrow for renovation and construction. The middle school is currently subject to a financing lease. Therefore, we are amending that lease to extend the term and increase the lease rental due for the school corporation. In exchange for the extension and increase to the lease rental, the building corporation will use the bond proceeds to make the needed improvements to the building. The increased lease rental will be sufficient to pay the principal and interest due to the bondholders.
Notice of this meeting has been published in the news banner on August 12th, 2021. To confirm the publication, the slides display a copy of the publication on August 12th, 2021. I will now entertain a motion to approve the notice and proof of publication.
So moved.
So moved by Mr. White. I need a second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Sheets. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 4-0.
Okay, the proposed amendment to lease plans, specifications, and estimates for the school building to be renovated and improved by the Bluffton-Harrison Middle School Building Corporation have been on file from the date of the publication of the notice until today. In the BHMSD Administration Building, copies of the same were presented to this meeting for the inspection of the members of the board. It is not necessary to review in detail all of the procedures to date, since the board is familiar with all the steps heretofore taken, including the proposed amendment plans, specifications, and estimates just submitted. But that if any persons present or other than members of this board have any questions concerning these documents or the previous actions of this board or other steps taken looking towards the renovation of the school building, the board is open to any public comment or questions at this time.
At this time, we will open the hearing for any comments from the public on whether the lease rental contained in the lease agreement is fair and reasonable for the construction or improvements being made. Hearing no public comments, I would request a motion for adjournment of this meeting.
So moved for adjournment.
So moved by Mr. Murray. Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. White. Any discussion from the board members? All those in favor? 5-0. Okay, moving on to our regular meeting. If you will stand for their pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If you'll please remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. We will now call the meeting to order. President's Prerogative. The Bluffton Bingo Brigade hosted a successful Banks of the Wabash competition on Saturday, September 11th. While participation attendance was slightly down, it was a great day with good performances and a special memorial tribute to 9/11. Thank you to Mr. Beater and the band boosters and all who helped to make this a special event. On Friday, August 27th, BHMSD hosted a Forever Tigers Night as a staff appreciation night at the BHS football game. 225 current and retired staff members and their families attended and had a great evening. Thank you to the Bluffton Athletic Boosters for accommodating the extra people at the football game and serving dinner to all. Moving on to public comment.
Thank you to all in attendance this evening as our board works to serve the students of our community. At this time, we'll be providing the opportunity for public comment on an agenda item being considered at tonight's meeting. As you enter the cafetorium, a copy of the agenda was provided as a handout. Included in the agenda were a draft copy of INB to be considered by the board and a draft copy of policy INC to be considered by the board. At this time, I would recommend that we move forward with public comment. We have, looks like 5 individuals listed up for comment, so I think we could proceed as normal with our commentary.
Okay. Just call them the names, okay. First up, Tammy Emmel. Steve Gerber will be next.
I'm speaking on behalf of a concerned member of our community, a parent and a grandparent. I understand after listening to the last board meeting that many were concerned that bullying seemed to be a huge issue and that that was taking place, and that because of that, that they believed that having a flag represented in a classroom gave kids a safe place to be. If that is the desire, which is a safe place, then would it not be possible to go back to the squares that we used to have, or I think are still placed in homes and in different places where anybody is safe, not just a particular group of people? As a Christian, I think it can pull on all of our heartstrings because all of us want kids to not be bullied. We want kids to be cared for. We want to see what is best for them. And I believe that having a pride flag can make a way for an agenda, and that by having the flag isn't just necessarily what they are wanting. I feel like it is an agenda that is being pushed on our youth. And as I said, as a grandparent that will be having kids come into school, not in Bluffton, but at another school, at another community, I want, if my grandkids would have a question about why is that flag up, I would fear that that teacher or kids would then push for that agenda of what that flag represented rather than just making it a safe place. So I believe that having a flag having a flag will allow more things to come into place that would be any other kind of group that would want to say, I want something safe, or I want my agenda being pushed. And so I just feel like it's like that slippery slope. When we allow one thing to take place, then it just becomes easier and easier down the road for more and more things to come along.
Thank you. Steve Gerber. Steve Zerbal's next.
As you can see, I don't have anything written down, but I just had to think, God created all of us. We were born in America, and God in the schools, and God we trust. One nation under God, we just said, is not a new thing. It's been passed on from the ages. And so it's not like we're trying to push a new agenda. So, but bringing a new flag in, like Tammy just said, I think is opening the door for other things. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. After Steve Serbaugh is Bev Balish.
Hi, I'm a 2000 graduate, resident of Bluffton, local pastor. I'm here tonight asking you to affirm these policies as they're written in this draft. From my personal struggles and working with kids for over a dozen years, I realize that the struggles of identity and worth and value aren't new. They're not uncommon. In fact, they're a very old story that plagues most of all of us in this room. They're just being rewritten differently, but they're being reworked in an environment that isn't neutral on anything, a culture that's not neutral on anything. We are polarized in almost every single avenue of our lives. The fact that we're so emotional about something that's trying to be neutral and the pressure that has been put on all of you is a testimony to that. Almost everything and everyone tries to convey to us and our kids the reasons of why we struggle and lack. They tell us it's those people, or it's you don't have this, or you don't have that, or you're not being true to yourself. Our kids are inundated with messaging on their screens that isn't neutral, messaging that's rooted in other people trying to build a brand, make a name, acquire wealth. Everybody, not everybody, has our best interest in mind, and almost everybody wants us to pick their side. I don't think it's the responsibility of the school system to be relative to that reality. I believe it is our job as parents to teach our kids worldview, to teach our kids how to help them struggle when life is hard. I don't have the expectation, nor do I believe it's the responsibility of our schools to do that for us. I have no doubt that everybody on all sides of this wants what's best for kids. But the further we stray away from something that's more neutral, the more chance we have to head on a crash course to greater polarization, in which this body will then have to make decisions of what you are for and what you are against. And in that, you will have to micromanage every one of those decisions. And in turn, it will force all teachers to kind of realize whether or not they can work in an environment that doesn't fully support what they believe. So it's because of those things that I think trying to stay as neutral as we can is for the greatest good of our community, because it allows the largest platform of common ground for the largest percentage of our population to work together to promote good for our kids. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Steve. Bev?
I don't know what to say. I put my name down because I thought if someone said something about me, again, that perhaps I could respond to it. I have nothing to say to change what's going to happen, okay? I do want to say that there's no agenda, you know? If you don't understand what the pride flag stands for, then do some research and find out. There's no agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Holly?
My name's Holly Whitbroat, and my husband's Dr. David Whitbroat. We had the privilege of having our two children go through the Bluffton school system, their entire education before their formal education. They're both successful adults. I'm so thankful for every teacher, every staff member that gave into their lives. And that's what I want to ask, that we will keep the academics the focus of our classrooms, not bring in controversial subjects. They'll learn those later, maybe in high school or in a class or somewhere. But I just ask that we purely focus on these wonderful teachers we have here. Our teachers come here, they want to raise their families, they stay, because it is a safe environment. It's immaculate, it's beautiful here. And I could just go on and on because I served here 10 years as a substitute nurse, and all 3 schools, any time of the day or night, I witnessed it. Yes, there is some bullying because we're human beings. We are evil, all of us, and we make fun of each other. We think we're better than others, but we're not. But one thing I do want to ask, and I have to recognize Mrs. Angie Sheets. She led an excellent program for special needs children for years, and it's known all over this part of Indiana, and the children come to Bluffton Elementary School. They're included. It is inclusive. They're into the classrooms at this point in history, and it hasn't always been that way. I've seen how the other children are trained to take care of their classmates. They accept them. They love them, and that's what I ask for all children at Bluffton. The impoverished children, the children that don't have clothing to wear. For the children, the teachers feed them in the morning. They make sure they get something in their bellies so they can learn something. For those children, I ask, please think of all of us, not just a small group or a group. And I just want to mention that when I see the rainbow flag, I know what the true meaning of it is. It was stolen by this movement. The rainbow flag is a symbol of God's mercy and grace. He destroyed the world with water because we're so evil. We don't want to obey God or listen to God. But you know what? God is still merciful, and that's what the rainbow flag means, nothing else, in my mind and my heart. And I just want to say thank you. And thank you for Bluffton School System. Ms. Balish is an excellent teacher. You haven't had your education complete until you've waded in the Wabash River with her as an 8th grader. She's excellent. There's so many excellent teachers. We could go on and on and on. They shepherd these children. They know them by name. They lead them out throughout the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you, everyone, for your comments this evening. We appreciate your input. Moving on to our consent agenda items. They were in your board packet for review. I just need a nod that you approve of the consent agenda items. Thank you. Reports and announcements. Mrs. Meitzler's here to discuss the Assistant Superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. It's good to see all of you. I do have a few things for you tonight, just in my regular report. One of them is I laid in front of you an invitation to our BHMSD Staff Wellness Day, which is scheduled for next Friday morning. You're all welcome to attend if you'd like to come and hear about ACEs training, which all of our staff will hear. And then the staff will get choices from 2 sessions, and those include things to do with not only their own wellness, but wellness for students. So it's something that we have a committee that's been working on for the last 3 years. This was scheduled to take place last year. Because of COVID, we were unable to do so, so we're very excited that next week we're on target to have this special morning. So it will be the entire morning. Students are at home on a scheduled e-learning day, and teachers will be in professional development for half of the day. So we're very excited, and I want to extend an invitation to all of you if you have interest in joining us on that morning. We've got some great sessions there scheduled. Also, just to mention that tomorrow morning, our students on the buses will have a bus evacuation drill. That's required 2 times during the year, and tomorrow is the day. So actually, I'm sorry, it's Wednesday is the day. So be thinking of them on Wednesday, which just, by the way, happens to be my birthday. I thought that would be a great day to do bus evacuation. So just a little side note. Also, just to let you know, we've been working on a variety of grants. I mentioned those in my report, and I want to highlight for you tonight just a grant. It's called the NESP grant, which is non-English speaking program. And that grant helps us to serve our 55 non-English speaking students, or students who have a second language. And so that number has grown over the last 10 years. It's grown quite a bit. And this is the first year that we actually have a licensed ENL teacher who oversees that program. And we've always had just an instructional assistant who worked, and she does a phenomenal job. But this year, we've added to that a licensed teacher. So we're very excited to help meet those needs of those kids in that program. So we'll see how that goes throughout the year as we make adjustments to the way we serve those kids. Most of them, I will make note, are served in their general education program for the bulk of the day. This would be just some extra service throughout, similar to like a Title I program. And then finally, I just want to make sure that you notice in your report, there is a finalization of one insurance claim. So just want to draw attention to that. If you have questions, please talk to me at any time. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Meitzler. Dr. Yates?
Okay, in your board packet tonight is our typical fund analysis report from the last month's financials. We are moving into negotiation period with our teachers, and one of our co-presidents, Ms. Mayer, is with us tonight. So we'll be using that financial information as we proceed forward as well. I want to also give you an update on some district projects that are ongoing, some completed. Our middle school pool area, the locker room tiles has been completed, and we'll be able to use that space now, which is very appreciative there at the middle school. Another issue that we're looking at is our outdoor heating unit for the pool. So that is something we're looking to get quotes on as well. Ongoing item is our transportation markings throughout the campus. So here at the high school, we have painted in new bus striping and labels for where the buses roll in at. And then we'll be doing the same thing at the elementary school to refresh the car rider ground signage, the painting that is on the asphalt out there. Most likely do that on Friday of next week when students are not present. And then the final two items, we are looking at adding to our weight room here at the high school for a condensing unit. You may recall about a year and a half ago, we installed a dehumidification unit in that location to help with the humidity. And it's done a very good job. It's made that space drier, but also a bit too warm. So we're trying to balance out those two things. So now we're adding on a condensing unit that will help with a little bit of the climate control as well. And then the final ongoing project, we'll be looking at leveling concrete throughout the campus at all three of our buildings, primarily at the middle school that has a sidewalk that runs around that entire building. So we'll be engaging with a vendor to have the concrete be leveled through a filling application. I mentioned earlier that we're getting closer to the collective bargaining process with our teachers. I've included a certified personnel exchange to give you a status update in terms of the add and subtracts of new staff and resignation or retiring staff. And then also an update from the Department of Education for our tuition support. This coming Friday is our ADM count day, and I'll be giving a report on our enrollment here next as well. But there is an update there on what our financial looks like for the number of students enrolled in our school district. And the last item in my superintendent's report for you tonight is the School Employers Benefit Trust. They'll be meeting on Thursday, September 16th. In our September meeting annually, we look at setting the increase to our health insurance plan for our teachers and staff. In the summer, the trust identified a not to increase of 2% for all of our schools in that trust. I'm hopeful that it is at a zero, but we will wait and see on Thursday, getting updated financials from the trust as well. So I will keep you updated in that regard. We will have our open enrollment process here in October, November, so staff can elect to either stay in the same plan, change their health insurance plan, or come on to a new enrollment at that point in time. So those are the major items I have for you this evening, but if you have any questions, I'd be happy to address them. Okay.
Moving on, did that include enrollment?
I'm going there right now.
Okay, thank you.
So for our enrollment report, we've finished week 5 of our school year. In our last meeting in August, or our first meeting in August, I provided an early estimate as to where our enrollment was. And this is going to show a bit of a graphic here, the same graphic that was in your board packet, showing week 1 to week 5. And this is typical of a school year for us. We start out a little high. We start school about a week or so, maybe 2 or 3 days earlier than some other schools as well. So when we get any transfers that happen, we keep those students in our registration until we get a request from a school just to verify that student is registered someplace. But you can see here our track over the last 5 weeks. We're currently at 1,717 students. The fractional of a student would be a private school or a homeschool student who's choosing to come here for a few periods a day. And then the black line through the middle of those red bars indicates where our enrollment was last year at the same time. So week 1 of last year through week 5 of last year. And you can see we are up in enrollment around 85 students, and that's a positive thing for our district. And we're hoping to maintain that as the school year continues.
Thank you. Moving on to community working group, student inclusion and acceptance.
Yes, last week the district released a press release that was shared, which identified the development of a working group to discuss, consider, and recommend options related to access, equity, diversity, acceptance, and ultimately student success. The working group is planning to hold its first initial meeting on September 20th, a week from tonight. And members of our community working group are as follows, and they're listed on the board behind me. Ms. Bev Balish, teacher at Bluffton Harrison Middle School. Jenny Broderick, a manager at Park Center Bluffton. Carla Castro, a licensed mental health counselor. Mrs. Holderman, a director of Department of Child Services. Steve Huggins, county council president for Wells County. Jody Lees, guidance director for Bluffton High School. Mrs. Meitzler, assistant superintendent for Bluffton Harrison MSD. Tim Miller, pastor, Bluffton Church of the Nazarene. Sherry Pfister, Apostolic Christian Church. Steve Serball, pastor, Life Community Church. And Stephanie White, social worker for Bluffton Harrison Middle School. And I would add, we did receive feedback following that announcement going out last week, and I engaged in, I would say, maybe a half dozen or so individuals via email and some on the phone in regards to the composition of our working group, trying to focus on a community-based working group, so individuals within our community. But based on that feedback, I think there is opportunity for the dozen individuals here to identify some additional members to join that process. And Mrs. Meitzler will be leading that process next week. And I've already encouraged this working group to identify other members to offer us suggestions to broaden that group. So I'm excited for that opportunity and the discussions that they'll be able to have, and ultimately bring some recommendations back to not only our board, but to our school community in general.
Thank you, Dr. Yates. Moving on to unfinished business, middle school roof replacement and improvements project.
Moisture Management has completed the roof testing and analysis on the middle school roof. Tonight, a proposal for your consideration is included in the board book. In addition, an updated performance timeline is provided, which moves forward the bid award to November as a result of material lead times. Current market trends are a 6 to 8 month lead time for roofing materials. And the updated timeline should provide enough lead time to secure materials for replacement to still happen next summer. So I recommend approval of the professional services proposal and request permission to advertise for the re-roof bid as presented.
We have a recommendation for approval of the professional services proposal and request permission to advertise for the re-roof bid as presented. I need a motion, please, from the board.
So moved.
First by Mr. Holland, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Murray. Is there any discussion from the board members? All those in favor? Oh, excuse me.
I was just going to say I was really impressed with their detailed analysis of what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, and even the follow-up. So I think we're in a good way.
I agree. All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to high school HVAC, Guaranteed Energy Savings Project.
Yes, we continue to be on schedule for work at the high school as well. On August 12th, 2021, our maintenance director, associate maintenance director, and I met with MCOR to identify targeted scope of work for the high school energy savings project. Following that initial meeting, MCOR provided a rough budget estimate for the scope of work, knowing the scope and associated costs will continue to be reduced to fit the budget available, along with the specific work to be performed. A copy of the rough budget estimate is attached for your consideration. We have no action tonight in regards to the high school HVAC, just informational at this point in time. I will add that we are moving into the process with that as well, with MCOR to look at our wall issue here at the high school, in addition to the HVAC elements. The goal is to bring together Moisture Management, who is looking at a roof replacement at the middle school, and bring their knowledge and expertise alongside MCOR to see if there's any other options we have in regards to the moisture issues at our high school.
Thank you. Moving on to Bluffton Harrison Middle School Building Corporation resolutions.
Following the opportunity for public comment this evening in regards to the middle school roof replacement and general improvements project and the high school HVAC guaranteed energy savings project, we have additional legal proceedings to consider. As required by school leasing statute, Indiana Code 2047-3, after a hearing, the school board must approve the amendment to lease and authorize the officers to execute such agreement. This lease is the agreement whereby the school corporation will levy the required property tax to pay the lease payments. The lease payments will be paid to the building corporation and used to pay the bondholders. Without the lease, bondholders will have no assurance that the building corporation will repay the bonds. The lease is the mechanism by which the property tax collections can get to the bondholders. I recommend the board approve of the resolution authorizing execution of the amendment to lease, which was Exhibit A in your board packet.
I have a recommendation of approval of the resolution authorizing execution of amendment to lease as presented. I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Sheets, second. Second by Mr. Holland. Any discussion from the board members? All those in favor? 5-0.
The building corporation currently owns Bluffton Harrison Middle School. The building corporation will also be the issuer of the bonds. The bond proceeds will be held by the trustee bank and will be used to pay the contractors for the work done on the building. As a result, the construction bids and contracts will need to be with the building corporation because the building corporation will hold the money to pay the contractors. The school corporation receives the bids and/or contracts and awards the bids and/or contracts under state law, but then assigns those bids and/or contracts to the building corporation. Tonight, I recommend the approval of the resolution assigning construction bids and contracts once received, which is Exhibit B in your board packet, as presented.
I have a recommendation for the board to approve the resolution assigning construction bids and contracts once received. I need a motion for approval.
I move.
First by Mr. White, second.
I'll second it.
Second by Mr. Murray. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? Opposed? 5-0.
The Securities and Exchange Commission requires that a school corporation enter into a master continuing disclosure undertaking before it issues bonds. The school corporation has previously entered into this type of agreement. The agreement requires that the school corporation agree to timely provide certain financial information to the SEC's EMA database and provide notice of any material events. The school corporation shall consider and approve the post-issuance compliance procedures. I recommend the board approve the resolution approving master continuing disclosure undertaking, Exhibit C in your board packet, as well as approval of the resolution approving the post-issuance compliance procedures, which is Exhibit D in your board packet.
I have a recommendation for the resolution approving master continuing disclosure undertaking and approval of the resolution approving post-issuance compliance procedures as presented. I need a motion for approval.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Sheets, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Murray. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to new business. Ratification of termination. Dr. Yates is recommending the termination of at-will employee Thomas Walker effective August 30th, 2021. I will now entertain a motion to approve this ratification of termination as presented.
So moved.
First by Mr. Holland, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. White. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to resignation of personnel. We have the following resignations to approve this evening. Charlotte Baker, high school library aide, and Eric Mettler, junior varsity baseball coach. I will now entertain a motion to approve these resignations as presented.
So So moved with appreciation for the years they provided to our district.
Thank you. First by Mr. Murray, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Holland. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to employment recommendation. A list of employment recommendations for approval have been included in your board packets as well as printed on the back of tonight's agenda. Brittany Satterfield, Elementary School Special Ed Instructional Assistant. Cassidy Middlestead, Middle School Special Educational Instructional Assistant. April Corbett, High School Library Instructional Assistant. Lynn Niermeyer, Long-Term Substitute. Mike Novel, High School Assistant Boys Basketball Coach. Shalora Linderwell, Middle School Girls Swim Coach, Volunteer. Tristan Dick, Rate of Pay Correction, and Spencer Schwartz, Substitute Teacher. I will now entertain a motion to approve these employment recommendations as presented.
So moved.
First by Mrs. Sheets. Second.
Second.
Second by Mr. White. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to Family and Medical Leave Act, we have the following request for FMLA approval this evening. Trent Miller, September 23rd through October 1st. I will now entertain a motion to approve this FMLA request as presented.
So moved.
First by Mr. Holland, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Murray. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to donations. We have the following donations to accept this evening. Northeast Indiana Area Health Education Center, medical kits for each HSE student. Hagerman Group, $150 for BHMSD Wellness Day. I will now entertain a motion to accept these donations as presented.
So moved with much appreciation.
Thank you. First by Mr. Murray. Second.
I'll second.
Second by Mr. White. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to 2021-2022 school improvement plans.
The Indiana Department of Education has set a deadline of October the 8th for submission of our school improvement plans, and they must be approved by school boards prior to submission. Included in your board packets this evening are the plans for review. These plans are very extensive, and administrators and teachers have spent countless hours working on those details. Our building principals are available this evening if you have any questions regarding their school improvement plans, and I recommend approval of the school improvement plans as presented.
I have a recommendation for approval of the school improvement plans as presented. I need a motion.
So moved.
First by Mr. Holland, second.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Sheets. Any discussion from the board?
I just want to share, I appreciate all the work that goes into those school improvement plans. It's very tedious, and everybody that worked on them did a great job, and it just gives you a snapshot of what goes on, but there's a lot of work involved with putting those plans together.
I agree. There was a lot of reading to do in regards to that, so thank you. All those in favor? 5-0.
Mrs. Thompson, before we go on, I would just note our principals will be uploading those to the Department of Education here soon, and then they'll also be on our website as well for public consumption too.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Yates. Second reading of policies IMB, teaching controversial issues, and INC, classroom postings. Policies IMB and INC are once again included in our board packets for approval on second reading. Policy IMB remains unchanged from the first reading. Policy INC has been modified slightly from the first reading. I will now entertain a motion to approve the policies as presented.
So moved.
First by Mr. Holland, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. White. Any discussion from the school board?
I just want to share, I didn't know whether I was going to share or not, but I jotted some things down, and the main thing I wanted to point out is all five of us, or six, I'm going to Dr. Yates spent a lot of time on this too. All 6 of us poured over all the information we were given. We read every letter, have listened to every concern. And our job as board members is not to have a knee-jerk reaction. I learned very early on, you've got to take your emotions out of your decisions to look at them with a clean lens, so to speak, and make your best judgment. We as board members, when we accept our oath of office, we are to make decisions based on the information and stuff that's provided to us. You know, after that, when all our information is obtained and we've listened to everybody, we as board members, we make an individual judgment. The biggest false thing that I've heard until I got on the board was the board is always in unison. That's not the case. We discuss things. Yeah, I might look at it because we vote 5-0 a lot of times. We take care of the problems before we come to vote. But once we make, and our decisions are based on our judgment, you know, we've got to take judgment and ownership of what we make our decisions on. We can't listen to people outside of our buildings. We've got to make our own judgments and not yield to specific things or groups. We have to look at our whole district as a whole. And we're charged to always remember that our greatest concern is the education and welfare of our children. Education being prominent. That's what we're charged to do. And I think that's what we've done. Is the policy perfect? Everybody can debate that. But we had to look at it as a whole, for the whole district. We have many, many opinions, but us 5 are charged with putting that, our judgment on what we believe is right for our district going forward. And we have done other things like the group, and we're going to add more people to it. So I think things are only going to get better. This thing was brought up by an incident, and at first I didn't like it, but I think it's made us stop and pause. And the biggest thing is, as I'm an official and out in the community with kids, they need acceptance. It doesn't have to be because of a symbol. And I'm not saying anything against the symbol, so don't take my words out of context. I mean, I love everybody the way they are. And their decisions they make, you know, those are personal decisions. And we have great people in our buildings, great guidance counselors, teachers, our administration, our staff. They take everything seriously. I know that because my children have been in the discipline procedure. You know, we talk about bullying. We have great people in our buildings that try to address these issues. Are they going to catch everyone? No. No. But I know if you have a problem, I could go up and call Mr. Metler, I could call Mrs. Linderwell, I could call Steve Baker, I could call anybody, and I would trust that what they're going to tell me is going to be done. And I just wanted to throw that out there, and I think the best way we can honor one another is, yeah, we're going to disagree, but we all have the best interests of the kids in mind, and that's how we had to come to this policy. And I think we can continue to work on it and expand upon it. And I took my notes and I didn't even look at them. I'm just speaking from the heart. And we just need to love on our kids, accept them where they're at, and work with them. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Any other discussion from the board? I will make a statement personally myself that I believe Bluffton is a wonderful school system. 3 children have gone through it. My husband went through it. I'm the transplant in my family. But I do want to say that this event, if you want to call it an event, I believe will make this school even stronger and include every single child in this school and ensure that they're safe. All those in favor? 5-0. Reviewing of other policies. As part of our ongoing review of existing policies, the following have been reviewed and no changes are being recommended at this time. DGA, authorized signatures. DHA, internal controls. DJF, purchasing procedures. DKA, use of credit cards. DKB, collection and forgiveness of debt. DLC, expense reimbursements. DLCE, expense reimbursements. I will now entertain a motion to approve the review of policies as presented.
So moved. Sorry.
First by Mr. Murray, second by Mr. Holland. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to BHMSD Healthy Operations Plan update.
Following Governor Holcomb's Executive Order 21-24, the Indiana Department of Health provided further detail in regards to quarantine status and contact tracing procedures. A district-wide communication was distributed on September 2nd, outlining the changes to protocols and procedures for BHMSD. Specifically, I'm recommending our BHMSD Healthy Operations Plan be updated to include school personnel in coordination with the Wells County Health Department will identify and communicate to any close contacts of positive cases within our schools. Individual quarantine status will be determined based on vaccination status, proximity to positive individual, duration of contact to the positive individual, and other factors. Identified close contacts will be communicated with as promptly as possible. I recommend approval of the updates to the BHMSD Healthy Operations Plan as presented.
I have a recommendation for approval of the update to the BHMSD Healthy Operations Plan as discussed. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
First by Mrs. Sheets, second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Holland. Any discussion from the board? All those in favor? 5-0. Moving on to other items.
We have no other items this evening.
Moving on to adjournment. I need a motion for adjournment of this meeting.
I move.
First by Mr. White, second. Second by Mr. Holland. Any other discussion? All those in favor? 5-0. Thank you for attending.